nobody gets 5 votes, we will then revote.
Thank you.
We'll be doing a roll call vote.
Roll call. Okay, so first we'll do Robert Cormack.
Mrs. Banis Clemens?
Yes?
Mrs. Cullen?
Yes.
Mrs. Dolan? Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Dr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Walters?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Nay.
As we described earlier from the beginning of the process, once one individual gets to a majority of votes being 5, this individual has gotten 6. That person has been selected by the board to be the individual who will replace Mrs. Kilderry. So accordingly, by action of the board, Mr. Cormack has been selected.
Mr. Cormack, if you're here, would you like to come up and say a few words at the podium?
Good evening. First of all, thank you very much for your confidence. I really appreciate it. Just for your knowledge, and you've seen it already, I've spent over 30 years in the economic development profession in Bucks County, over 45 in the profession totally. A couple of items on my resume that I didn't put in is that I've spent over 25 years with the GAC at the VOTEC school. I've also been involved with the strategic planning process last year, and one of the things is that I've been involved with the Down Syndrome Society in southeastern Pennsylvania, and that's been over 30 years since my son's been born. So I've got some knowledge from looking at it from the nonprofit end. I have many years in finance, so I feel very qualified for taking a position on your board, and I thank you for your time. Take any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to share a little bit of some thoughts quickly. So this is a very difficult decision. We received very qualified applications, and so it was really difficult to make a decision. There's no right or wrong answer as far as who the best candidate is to serve, or what factors are important to each board member when making a decision. When I evaluated the applications, I was looking for someone who brings a different skill set to the table. I also think that the more angles we evaluate things from, the better the outcome will be. I was also looking for someone who has been consistently involved in the community and in the district in other capacities besides just this board. Because we don't just come to meetings. We are out in the district, we're visiting classrooms, we're attending activities, awards assemblies, art shows, and so it's important to be involved in those things as well. Seeing how the decisions we make play out and affect the people living them is important, and it puts things into perspective, so I think that that's helpful. Also, when I make decisions on this board, I ask myself 3 questions. Is this best for kids? Are we giving staff the time, tools, and professional development needed to carry it out effectively? And is this the most cost-effective way to do it? I look for those kinds of things when I'm looking through the applications as far as whether or not those are important things. The other piece is finding where each item obviously falls on the priority list, but these are themes that run through my head when I'm looking to make decisions. So I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of what I was thinking about when I was making those evaluations, and that was why I came to the decision that I came to.
I just want to say thank you to any of the applicants that happened to be here tonight. It was a difficult decision, but I took the same kind of approach in looking at the board overall, what exists right now and what skills could be offered that might be different. I'm not going to put you on the spot, Mr. Cormack, but the economic development piece was very important to me. I know that it's something that we're working on as a board. Dr. Boltman's very interested. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Dr. Boltman, but getting those, getting our students on the, on the best footing when they graduate, and making connections with, businesses in the community, and just knowing what skills our students need, what's going to be marketable, what's not going to be marketable, and I think that that kind of knowledge can be valuable. So that's what that's what was attractive to me. And just again, thank you to everybody who put yourself out there. I know what it's like to put yourself out there to run for school board, so I appreciate you stepping up and doing that for the community.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to have Mr. Cormack come out to be sworn in, and the Honorable Judge Baum is here to swear him in, so we appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
We're going up on stage. I guess so. Congratulations. Thank you. Let's go around this. We have the camera on, so let's do this. All right, Robert, let's make it official.
Okay.
I'm going to give you the oath of office. If you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Yes, sir.
I, and state your name,
I, Robert Cormack,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties
that I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir.
Do the best for Pennridge. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooper, can you take a picture?
Right here?
Yep. Yeah, she'll come down.
All right.
One more. Thank you.
All set? Good. All good?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Both. Thank you. And I need to sign that officially. Your Honor. Official signature.
Congratulations, nice to meet you.
Okay, congratulations, Mr. Cormack.
Thank you.
And next is old business. Does anyone have any old business?
Yes. Since the nominations opened before I got a chance to speak in terms of the thing, I want to comment, since there's been a lot of comment tonight about the process. I've obviously lived through perhaps 8 or 10 of these nominations and then replacements of a board member who stepped down for whatever reason. Certainly in the first 25 years that I served, all those involved the interview process that's been talked about so much here tonight. I believe that that process worked very well. It was something that was done publicly. Obviously, we were required to do it publicly because of the school code. The questions were asked of each and every candidate, all the same questions. They weren't revealed to the candidates in advance. They had to respond to them on the spot. And the public was allowed to comment on the questions and the comments that were made in response to the questions. They were told, though, that it needed to be an advocacy issue. They needed to respond in a positive fashion. They could talk about any or all of the candidates that were on display, so to speak. They needed to be advocates for those candidates. It was not meant to be a negative or something where people were castigated in public. I think that process worked well. As always, board members could vote for whomever they wanted. no matter whether that was the candidate that the public thought was the best candidate or not, no different than this process in that regard. I found this process rushed because fortunately I know Mr. Cormack. I've met him before. He applied for a board position before. So he was one of the candidates I knew. Some of the other candidates I did not know. And I don't feel like just getting a resume and an application really gets you to know those. So I much prefer that previous process, and I would recommend the board go back to it. The process to me was further complicated by the fact that we had 7 applicants apply. One of them applied late, at least we were told that by the board secretary. And then just today, less than 5 hours before the meeting, we were told that that late application was not indeed late. I find that sort of thing very frustrating because I had disqualified that candidate just because of the lateness. It was very clear in the process that applications were to be submitted before noon on Monday, last Monday, October 7th, and 6 of the candidates complied with that without any issues. One may or may not have. No clear reason to me what happened in the situation that occurred. But to me, it doesn't help. I actually would advocate that the board and the administration release the names of the applicants, not necessarily the personal information, but the names of the application. I think the public deserves to know who we are considering for such a position. So those are my comments on the process, and I'm hopeful that it will return to something akin to the old process in the future.
Can I go? I think that it would be a great thing in a board retreat to have this kind of discussion as to who on that board, how they would feel comfortable moving forward with this process in the event that it happens again. We could not discuss it together as a whole group, though, because it's a violation of sunshine law, which was frustrating for me because I would have liked to have been in a room with all of us and just said, not talk about the applications, let's not talk about the names, but let's talk about the process and how we feel most comfortable going forward with this. And we didn't get to go together as a whole group and do that because it was a violation of the sunshine law. So I think that it would be a great topic of discussion at a board retreat when we don't have a vacancy up, because we can't talk about it in that time frame, but talk about it hypothetically, what we would do. Because I'm open to dialogue and discussion, but we were not able to do that within that 30-day period, and Ms. Kilderry's resignation was a surprise to us. So I agree with you, Peter, it does feel rushed, but it was sort of dumped on us, and we did what we had to do. We fulfilled our responsibility.
And yeah, the process is rushed. I want to remind everybody that you have 30 days, am I right? You have 30 days to do it. 4 of us are not going to be here for most of, starting on Wednesday through Friday, we won't be here. We'll be at the school board conference, which the school district has already paid for, and reservations have been made and so on. So it is a bit rushed. I would have welcomed a discussion, just like Mrs. Walters said. For whatever reason, we were not able to do that because there's laws, you can't have discussions in secret. I do want to clarify a point though, Mr. Miller. It is if the board chooses to have interviews, then those interviews would have to be public. But that it's still a choice whether you have those interviews. And I do agree with the points that have already been made about privacy, especially the history, with the privacy issues and with the information that was shared and not shared, as the case may be. And I would also like to just add a comment. I do have permission from the one applicant. I spoke with her about it, and she was, she had said, I'm okay. I'm okay with that. And I told her, I would argue the case if you want the case argued, but she was okay with the process, and so we moved on with with this. But she did ask that the school district, and I agree, that we look into our technology and just make sure if we're going to make a deadline for people, that we really need to make sure there's no hiccup in people getting their information to us if it's going to be a timestamp on an email kind of thing. So, anyway, I just want, I had asked her, you know, and I wasn't going to say anything, but since it was brought up, I did speak with her about it, and she's okay.
Ms. Cullen, a couple of things in response to you. First, I think it should be made clear, and I'm sure that Dr. Yarnell would agree, that Mr. Cormack was not late with his application. He was, in fact, the person that was selected was on time with his application. So I don't want that impression left with the general public. Secondly, with respect to the concerns raised by Ms. Walters and Ms. Cullen, the Sunshine Act is unequivocal on the point about the board's inability to talk about who they will appoint in a quorum discussion that would be an executive session. And so, as much as I appreciate the members of the board's feelings on that issue, my responsibility and my fidelity is to the law, and you can blame the General Assembly. I can give you their address. Thirdly, with respect to your desire to talk about a what-if process, what if this happens again, what should we do? A board retreat is an appropriate place to talk about it, since there is no, you're not talking about any particular candidate. And perhaps there's a time and a place to do that. I do, it is regretful in the modern day. The school code was written in the 30s or 40s or 50s and updated occasionally since then. These days, it's more and more difficult to get people together for a meeting. 30 days seems like an awfully short period of time when you have families and commitments and soccer and vacation and holidays and so on and so forth. But it is the world in which the General Assembly has chosen to make us live. So it is regrettable, but nonetheless, as members have indicated, we had a responsibility. The board has discharged it, and we can talk about how we would do that differently next time, but it is done. Mr. Cormack is here, and he either receives our congratulations or condolences, depending on how you do it, but he's part of the whole.
So, I just want to clarify, because I don't know if people in the audience understand. There was an application that was emailed in, and it was not received on our server, and so it showed up with a late timestamp, and we didn't find out until this afternoon that that application had actually been sent on time, but for some reason our server, I don't know what happened, or I shouldn't say the server, because I don't even know, I'm just,
Be careful.
somehow in internet land, the application was sent here at one time and received here hours later, and we don't know why, but the timestamp was different. But the original email was forwarded, time-stamped at the appropriate time. That is why, when that information was brought to Dr. Bolton and I today, I immediately reached out to the entire board to let everyone know, because I didn't want anyone to make a decision, I didn't want something to affect anyone's decision that wasn't accurate. And so, since we all had the impression that it was late, that's something that would impact the decision, especially since the Post said that we wouldn't entertain late applications. And so I didn't want board members to, not give this application consideration based on something that was not accurate if that person did, had actually sent it on time, which is, the case. So that was, shared it as immediately as possible. So that was that situation. I just wanted the public to understand, because I think with a little bit of the back and forth, you may be like, what are they talking about? So just thought that might be helpful. Okay, new business. Okay, then we are back to public comment.
Alex Rajan, Bedminster Township. Back to your earlier comments about positions, I agree you should never put staff and administration you're hiring in the public domain, like, Dr. Bolton, we all love him, but I don't want to know his personal information. I agree with that. Congratulations, Mr. Cormack. But elected positions are more public information, and I know this is not an elected position, and I think we've beat it to death. There was no interview process done. So that's the point of this. I mean, I work in private industry. When we hire people, we look at their resume, we actually interview them. The law here states, though, if you're going to interview folks, it has to be done publicly. That's the law. You chose not to do it. That's your right to do. I agree with that. So what you did was correct. So fortunately, I know Mr. Cormack. I met him. I met two of the other candidates, too. Mr. Cormack happens to live right next to Mr. Kraus. And I know where these folks are coming from. There's other candidates that are COOs of offices that I know personally that have applied. So I know a little bit about the folks that have applied because I encourage people to apply, because I'm running as well. I'm publicly running for a position that the people can vote for. That's the difference. It's not an appointed position for a school staff position that we don't need to know their personal. It's a public. Mr. Cormack's going to be a voting member. He's going to represent our community. And I congratulate you on that, by the way. I do congratulate you on your position. So just keep that in mind. We have to do better. We got to do better than our corporations do. And I work for one of the good ones. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay. I just want to share a personal situation because of some of the comments that were shared tonight. And one of the comments that was shared tonight actually was, again, misinforming the public about the response that I gave to a nutrition worker who came in here to this board meeting and suggesting that that person was ignored when that was clearly not the case. A picture was taken of that individual who was upset. Another picture was taken of me appearing to have a smile on my face. And the split screen was posted online and suggested that I was laughing at this woman who came in here in tears, sharing her concerns. And that was floated around social media in an effort to try to make me look bad and to exploit that individual. I've seen community members doxxed online. I've seen community members, I've actually heard of community members who've been called and threatened at their work for disagreeing with people on Facebook. I do not want to subject people who want to step up and do something positive in this community and volunteer for a position on this board to that kind of behavior. I actually know some good people who said, I'm not applying for that. I saw what they did to people last time. And I don't, as much as I would love to volunteer and serve my community, I don't want to go through that. And it's a shame because from my perspective, it prevents good people with good intentions from stepping up. And so I just think that that's a shame, and I think that in this community, people need to learn to respect different people's opinions and be honest and nice to each other. And so I just wanted to say that. For the announcements, the next school board meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 18th. That's the only announcement. So I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second. I'm adjourned.
Thank you.